This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
Bonus content. Tekwar, episode 13.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna bob and weave all night here? Or are we gonna get to it? Now, what do you want from me?
It's not complicated, Jake. I want to join forces, form a partnership.
2 words. Why me?
You're special. I've studied your career. I know how you turned your life around from tech head to tech crusader. You're the best. Nobody's put away more lords than you. We share the same goals.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast brought to you by the generosity of our listener, Ryan. I'm Luke, here with my co-host, Jordan. What's real, Ryan?
Well, he should be answering that then, shouldn't he? Because I have something that's real, but maybe it should be him answering.
Well, shout out.
Yeah, what's real, Ryan?
I'll tell you what, you never answer what's real anyway, so don't give Ryan shit.
No, I have one. I have one now. It's a quote from the show, and they were like, "Surf the net through the Matrix. Do I look like a wirehead?" And I remember that one line. I was like, I don't remember any of this. Is this how they talk in this show?
You forgotten Tekwar?
Yeah, I kind of forgot. There was a lot I forgot about Tekwar when I was watching this. So thanks a lot, Ryan.
Well, we're recording our first ever bonus episode for charity, bonus content for charity, and I'm playing with different names for it.
It doesn't matter. We know what the point is. The point is, this is going to charity, so that's why. So you can't criticize how bad this might be.
Well, our listener Ryan has generously donated to the Annex Cat Rescue here in Toronto, and he's requested that we go back to where it all began and watch another episode of Tekwar.
Yeah, and it has been so long since we've watched this show, but part of it is like, I think it's very fitting. I think it was a good choice to go back to Tekwar because it's what we started with almost 5 years ago. And
good job, Ryan.
Yeah, and but also it's a little bit like revisiting an old friend, you know?
It's been a while since we watched it. Do you remember why we originally took the escape pod on Tekwar and never finished it?
No, I don't do. I'm assuming one episode was just so bad that the score got so low, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, you don't. So you don't have a general feeling for how Tekwar was back when we watched it.
No, because we were having this conversation offline, or whatever people say, when we were not recording, and you had said that we'd probably find Tekwar a lot better than we remembered at the time, and it's sort of true. There's a definite charm to this, to its sort of like hokiness, but I don't know if it's gotten better.
Well, it's funny because this is obviously the first series we ever watched, and we were still figuring out the podcast at the point. I think the point we were figuring out that I think in the second episode we introduced the escape pod, because after the first episode you told me you didn't think you could watch all of this and you weren't sure you could do the podcast.
That seems about right. It's like a midnight call. Luke, I don't think I could do this.
But that's sort of what created the escape pod. Like, escape pod exists because we watched Tekwar first.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I don't remember that, but it checks out.
So really, I like to think of this as like, it's nice to go back because it's something that's shaped what we've made here today.
Well, let me ask you one thing. Did you remember that Jake used to be a tech user?
I did not. I forgot about that.
I forgot about that too, because it's I'll just say it's the real crux of this episode. Well, not the crux of it, but it's a major point that he used to use tech, which in this world is the drug they use, and I can't even remember what you're supposed to, like, the high you're supposed to get out of tech. Is it always like hallucinations? Do you remember?
No, it's like virtual reality. Tech is virtual reality.
Right. Oh, that's right. And so you get addicted to it for some reason. Anyways, he used to be addicted to it, lost his marriage and his job as a cop. That's what you have to kind of remember. But when they said that, I was like, is that what happened? I don't remember that at all.
Well, we did skip all of the TV movies, so we missed a lot of that backstory.
Fair enough.
It was another problem with their first series, is that we didn't realize there were TV movies before the Tekwar series to help establish a lot of the characters and their traits.
Yeah, and also, this is sad to say, because I know it started our 3-word eulogy. I forgot that old what's-his-face died.
Sid Gomez?
Sid Gomez. I forgot he died, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a new... This is after he got his new partner, Sam Houston.
Who they don't use at all. Anyways, I'm just getting into it right now, but it's funny just to go back to these shows. It's very, very odd because it's like, it's almost like finding a book that you were halfway through and then trying to start reading it again like years later, and you're like, what was happening? Who are these people?
So you don't have a great memory for what was happening in Tekwar.
No. Well, as it like as it washed over me, things started coming back. But when like people would mention stuff in the show, I was like, what are you talking about? And let me just say now, spoiler, Shatner's not in this.
No, it's a Shatner free episode. But Jordan, there is a little treat with one of the co-writers of this episode. He's done something else we watched afterward.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, it was the co-writer David Karen. He wrote an episode of Beyond Westworld called The Lion, which we would watch several months later. So this was a prelude to more of his writing.
And was he? I don't remember that episode. Was he knocking out of the park then too?
Yeah, don't you remember the episode of Westworld where they had to look into race cars?
I do remember that actually.
The Lion.
The Lion, yeah. I don't remember why it was called Lion, but I'm assuming that was the guy's nickname.
I think it was the name of the car.
There you go. Checks out. Tracks.
All right, should we get into it, Jordan?
Yeah, let's do it. Zero tolerance. It's been a while.
Here's the IMDb summary for Tekwar, Episode 13, Zero Tolerance. A mysterious man contacts Jake. Jake discovers that the mysterious man has made a potion that will kill anyone who has used tech. Jake must try to figure out how to stop this potion from being distributed.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Can I just say one thing right off the bat? We're going to see our opening scene is going to be a very sort of like nervous, I think it's supposed to be a teenager or woman in her early 20s, coming to a somewhat sketchy area. It's like an industrial area, like kind of a lot of, like fire escapes and miscellaneous tubes and stuff. And she's clearly going to get drugs for a drug deal. And it's something that I can't remember if this was common in Tekwar, but we meet first essentially like a gangster, like a bad guy, a drug dealer. But all these guys kind of look like they're supposed to be 1940s gangsters in like whatever year this is, 2060 or whatever. Was that how it always was? Do you remember that?
Do you think I didn't think he looked that way, but maybe.
Well, he was kind of in shadows, but then later on we see when we meet these other guys at like that restaurant stuff, they're also kind of dressed like old-timey gangsters. And I was like, is that just how people dressed, or is it just like the clothes they had available, which would also check out for the show?
I mean, maybe that's just the style of the time. 2047,
yeah, maybe.
You just dress a little old-timey.
Yeah, you might be right.
1947's making a big comeback in 2047.
Is it 2047? Is that when the show takes place?
I believe so.
Right. So yeah, I mean, look, stranger things have happened. 1940s gangster fashion can come back. But the point of this is the beginning of setting things into motion, which is she goes to buy drugs, right? It's the first time, but then she doesn't buy drugs because this guy gets shot in the neck with a dart, correct?
Well, Jordan, I got to correct you all over the place here. He's not a drug dealer. He's a tech dealer.
He's a tech dealer. Excuse me. But it's the equivalent of a drug.
And his name, Jordan, is Mega Marlowe.
Is that what it was? I thought I put just Mr. Marlowe. It's Mega Marlowe?
Yeah, it's Mega Marlowe, Frank to my friends.
You know what? Now let me ask you that. I'm not someone who has a nickname. I don't think you do either. But don't you think like Frank would be what he asked most people to call, and then Mega as his friend?
It's a good question, Jordan, but maybe that's his street name.
It's a street name, yeah.
You gotta look tough on the street.
That's true. So this girl goes to buy tech from him, and we see like this guy in the shadows who shoots a dart at him just as he's doing this tech deal, and it hits him in the neck, and he's like, "Oh, it's a bug."
Jordan, I can see how much you enjoyed this episode. I loved everything about Mega Marlowe because you mentioned it earlier, but I love when she asks. She tells him she wants to surf. I believe is her terminology. She wants to surf, and this is when you said this. You said he replies, "The net? Do you mean through the Matrix?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a good line.
Except that he makes a good point, which is true to the shows. He's not some sort of wirehead. He only sells tech. Wireheads are like Nika, who work at
that's right.
Cosmo. They're hackers who go into the internet. She's asking all the wrong questions.
That's right. He's just like, come on, just buy this tech, and that's all. That's what he wants. But with this, what we get is introduction to this shadowy figure.
I'm not going to let you talk about the shadowy figure still.
Oh man, okay.
I just love so much because he like finally says like, yeah, I'll sell you some tech. And he's like, I've got a good news for you. I have a 3-for-1 special on tech today.
I mean, is that how it works? Is that how drug dealers, tech dealers? I don't know what you want to call these guys. It's drugs. They're drugs.
He's got a 3-for-1 deal, Jordan. And guess what? It's full res. No 360p for her. It's full res.
Man, you were much more fascinated with this scene than I was. I was just like, let's move on, guys. We get it. It's all technobabble that doesn't make any sense.
It makes perfect sense. It's a full res tech, Jordan. 3-for-1.
You're right. Sorry, it makes sense. My point is, I don't care, I guess is my point. Sorry. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter to the show at all if it's in high res or not.
You hate all this color. You feel the same about Tekwar than you did to begin with.
I just want to get this action going, you know? That's all. I want to get the ball rolling. I want to see Jake. I want to see Jake in action.
Well, as you said, the man gets shot in the neck with a dart, but not just any dart, Jordan. It's from a needle gun, and the dart, it's made of ice.
Yeah, isn't this like from that, like, I don't know what you call it, like you've heard that thing, like how to do the perfect crime? It's like shoot them with a ice arrow or something because there's no evidence. I was like, I don't think that works still.
I think it's like some sort of brain teaser, and it's I think it's you stab someone with an icicle.
That's right. Yeah. It's like one of those things. But I was like, so they're actually just doing that. He's figured out how to put whatever we will find into a needle that's made out of ice. That's the method he's using, because he's so worried that people won't know will think it's tech, or won't think it's tech.
He needs it to be untraceable, Jordan, because this injection causes Mega Marlowe to start hallucinating a fireball flying around and hitting him and lighting him on fire.
Okay, so I did have a question about this as we watch the rest of the episode, because we're going to see other people who are also going to get injected with this ice crystal needle thing. And what all of their hallucinations are things that are more grounded in reality. They're like things of like people they know or people in the room that are being aggressive and they start hallucinating. But this is the only guy who hallucinates like fireballs. So my question then is, did this just happen to him recently? Like he just had a battle with these big fireballs and this is coming back to him?
Mega Marlowe was at his D&D night a little earlier, so it was on his mind.
That's right. There you go. That makes sense then. That checks out. It's just a line of dialogue. That's all I'm asking for.
At any rate, he immediately drops dead of a cerebral hemorrhage, and it gives that kid a real spook who runs off, so she doesn't buy that tech. But we're left with this question of like, what happens to this man? What killed him?
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, I'm tuning in. They're definitely not changing the channel. It's all Tekwar tonight.
And of course, you finally see Jake Cardigan. He's driving to work at Cosmos Security, the place that old Boscombe runs. Not in the episode, though.
That's right. And I had forgotten about this, too. So he's driving along the highway, and in this future, in this universe, as you drive down the highway, there's like a canopy of advertisements.
Yeah, holographic advertisements cover your drive.
Which is pretty good. I think that's pretty good.
And he gets a call on his vid phone in his car, and it's a man he doesn't know named Peter. He's very patient taking a call on video from a man you've never seen before. I would have just been like, no thank you, and hung up.
It was funny because you need him to have this conversation. But they start having the conversation at first, and you think that Jake knows the guy because it takes him so long to be like, and who is this, by the way?
I know, I thought that was very funny.
Now, I'll say this. I've had those conversations, but because I can't remember the person's name and I keep waiting for them to miraculously just say their name, which no one will do halfway through a conversation. So maybe that's what Jake was doing.
So that's why when I call you and we'll be talking for like 20 minutes and you're like, hi, it's Jordan. You'll just say it in the middle of the thing.
That's right.
You'll be
that's
like,
exactly
I better just drop my name in here in case he doesn't know it.
No, it's just like there's always some random person from work calling. I'm like, who is this person?
When's he going to say his name in the middle of this call?
But here's what I like. So Peter calls Jake. He starts. Jake sort of realizes right away that this guy's being creepy. I think he tells him right off the bat. He's like, "Hey, I just killed a tech lord, right?"
Yeah, not a lord, just a dealer, Jordan.
He kills a tech dealer, and I think Jake, being the industrious sort of quick on his feet guys, reaches over, and it's there's no way that it was secretive at all. Like the way the camera's shooting Jake, you can see everything. But he leans behind him, and apparently in his car, he pushes a little button, and that's all we see. And then it cuts to who he's calling, which is Cosmos, and it's Nika. And she's just like, hey, it's Jake with a code 3. He's saying blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, he did all that just from pressing the button?
Code 3, just trace that call. That's what it means, I guess.
Trace the call. So that's what they're trying to do. But don't worry, this guy's scrambling things.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to trace this call. Essentially, Peter tells Jake that he's killed this man, and he knows that Jake has been trying to catch Mega Marlowe for a while, that he's taken him to trial before. Mega Marlowe just can't get taken down. He's too good. Jake can't tie him to any crimes. But now that he's killed this guy, he's like, hey, maybe you and I should team up together. I did a favor for you. Maybe we should work together, take Tech out, and let's go meet at a secluded place at midnight tonight. And you know what? Bring another tech dealer's name, and I'll kill that guy for you too. So it's kind of this thing where it's just like strangers on a train, but only one guy does the killing.
That's right. Yeah, and part of the argument we're gonna find is this guy really, really wants Jake to be part of this. Like, this is sort of a way to, in some ways, initiate Jake in, to also kind of test his loyalty. But it's like, hey, isn't this exactly what you want? You should kind of join me. That's really what this will start becoming. I
got to give it to Jake, too. Even in this first phone call, he never really reacts in a way that would be like, what are you talking? Why would I want this? He's like, I'll play along. From second one, he's like, I'm just going to play along with this stranger on my phone.
Yeah. And, I mean, let me ask you this. It's been several years. Have you grown on Jake Cardigan? Are you a Jake head now?
I've always been a Jake head, Jordan.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. He's the original.
He's the best version of this type of character that we've seen a million times. He's the best version of it.
You're probably right. Yeah. I you know what I have to say? I think that credit goes to what's his face? Greg Evigan.
Absolutely. He does so much with this character. He's so fun to watch. Everything about Tekwar, coming back to it was like coming home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I got to say, I love too, because he gets to the office. They tell him, we couldn't trace a call, blah, blah, blah. And, we meet his his new old partner, Sam Houston's there. Nika's hanging around. So we're seeing all these characters we like and haven't thought about it in a million years. And then they mention that they had to call the police and tell them about this supposed hit, because the autopsy report from Mega Marlowe was that he just died of a typical brain hemorrhage from a tech overdose.
Yeah.
So that means if someone's taking credit, you have to tell the cops. And I of course, immediately forgot that they weren't cops. I forgot that was the premise of the show, is that they're security agents.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, when they say they told the cops, the camera pans around and Lieutenant Winger, the robot, walks in, and I stood up and cheered in my office. I was like, Winger's back.
Hey, one thing I want to mention before we talk about Winger is when they're talking about this guy, Peter, and they're like, hey, do you recognize him? Like, no, he doesn't seem to show up in any of our databases. And Nika says, oh, he might have had a whole Butte job.
Oh, I know. Butte job was great too.
Yeah,
right?
And then they mention at one point, one of the things, so obviously it's like a makeover, like a plastic surgery sort of thing. But one of the things that they mentioned, and it made me laugh, was they're like, he might have had a Butte job, and they're like, whatever, this. And they go, shin implants.
Yeah, they can't tell because I think they say check if someone his height and weight matches, and she's just like, he could have lost weight or got shin implants. It's like, it's not gonna work.
Shin implants just made me laugh. Shin implants.
Jordan, quick question: how much of shin implants have changed your life?
Well, I'll tell you, I can get up and down to those top cupboards like no one's business. Hey, let me ask you about Winger. He's and this is an embarrassing thing because I can't remember. He's a robot.
Yeah, he's a robot. He's got that weird forehead.
Yeah.
It's because he's a robot.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what his deal was. Because later on, he's going to get shot and we're going to see them kind of working on him. And I was like, is he all robot? Is he part robot? But he's all robot.
All robot,
He's
baby.
all robot, baby. Nice, okay.
Top to bottom.
No shin implants here.
Oh, man, I was so happy to see Winger. All the classics were back with the sole exception of William Shatner. So I was so in the mood because they just introduced them right off the top of the episode. I'm like, here we go. Now we're back in Tekwar, baby.
Yeah. It was nice.
At any rate, because they reported to the cops, they're going to put a wire on Jake to go to this meeting. And of course, Jake heads to the meeting, and they meet in some overpass somewhere, some pedestrian overpass. And as soon as he gets there, Peter, of course, isn't showing up in person. He's just showing up via hologram.
Yeah.
He's tricky that way. He's tricky. And he immediately knows that Jake is wired. He can, whatever. He can sense it. The wire is apparently not very good at hiding itself. So Jake has to, save face. So he stomps the wire into existence. He's like, can you trust me now? And I was just like, Probably not, but I guess we'll just continue with this.
And I do like the weird nebulous connection between the police and this security agency, because like while this is happening, Winger and Houston are in the car essentially monitoring the audio, and so they're just like working together. And when he smashes the audio, it's one of those things where like Winger's like, we got to get in there, and Houston's like, no, give him time, like let Jake do his thing. You know, he may be a renegade, but he gets results.
Yeah, I believe she says, give him 5 minutes, and Winger's like, I'll give him 3. And they're like, okay, deal.
I think that's a negotiation.
At any rate, Peter kind of explains like why he's in this. He's doing this and killing these tech dealers because he wants to protect kids. It's a big part of his raison d'etre, and he thinks that Jake, because he's a recovered tech head and has become this great tech fighter in the world, probably shares his vision. And he's like, I want to team with you, Jake, and there's one reason why. And Jordan, you'll never guess what that reason is.
What does he say?
Because he's the best, Jordan.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I can't disagree.
I love it. I forgot how much they kept saying he's the best. That every other show, I think, knocks that off now.
Yeah. Well, you as a viewer need to know that. Don't worry about it. This is the guy for the job.
It's just so funny. We see it in every other show we watch. It is like, the guy's the best. That's why he's here. But I now only think of it as originating on Tekwar.
Yeah, even shows that we watched that happened 20 years before, like, ugh, what a ripoff of Tekwar.
Anyway, Peter wants Jake to name any tech lord he likes, and he'll kill him right there and then. Jake just needs to give him a name. Of course, Jake hesitates. He's not sure about giving this guy a name. And as soon as he hesitates, Peter's just like, oh, no worries. I'll pick one for you. See you later. And he just like walks off and deholograms.
Now, I know it's not really this show, and it doesn't necessarily hurt the episode, but there is something interesting they could have played with a little bit, which is having Jake maybe be a little bit more on the fence, kind of like playing that, like, because this guy is doing good work for him, it is making his job easier, is making the world a better place by getting rid of these quote-unquote bad people who are doing bad things and are hurting people, but they never really have that him being indecisive about it all. Jake always is going to do the right thing, and there's never really a question that he would kind of go outside of the boundaries of the law to get what he wanted done.
That's very true. That's not something the show toys with really at all this episode. It would have been an interesting thing to do, and I thought they might for a bit, but it never really comes up.
I think maybe part of it is that like you as a viewer know who Jake is, and you wouldn't have bought it anyways, right? It's like, no, he would never go outside of it. He's too cool. He's too much of a perfect guy.
But what we do get is they cut to a very fancy restaurant where a tech lord and his goons have just ordered a full chocolate torte to eat.
There's some things in this show that I don't know if they're meant to be funny or not. This guy's name is Mr. Imago. And yeah, he is just like, it's a bunch of like gangsters, tech dealers, tech lords or whatever. And they're just having a nice dessert. Having a nice dessert at the end of the day.
Jordan, this is maybe good for our listeners and yourself here. Do you know the difference between a tech lord and a tech dealer?
I think the tech lord runs the tech and the tech dealer's just out selling it. That would be my guess.
Okay, I think that's pretty close. I think you got the general gist of it. I think they're like, they run a territory and they have dealers out running around. So I think you've got the hang of it.
Yeah, I can't remember what these guys are. I think he's a tech lord, this dude, Mr. Imago.
Yes, this guy is a tech lord. That's why he orders a full chocolate torte at his table. And I just love that they kept talking about this chocolate torte.
Yeah, I know they did say it several times. Like, I'm just having a torte.
And this waitress who brings out the torte is really good because she puts it down, and you know they're bad guys. They're kind of like a little too handsy, and they keep saying to her, they're like, "Hey, usually when we order a torte, we get a little something extra." And do you think they meant whipped cream?
Well, it's funny. They said that because they're sort of like sexually harassing her, and I shouldn't say sort of. They are sexually harassing her. But yeah, when they say we usually get a little something extra, I was like, what? Like the waitress usually has sex with you after you give a cake, or is it just whipped cream? And he just said it in a creepy way.
Side of ice cream, maybe?
Yeah. we usually have this a la mode. But if you say it like that, it sounds weird.
It was just so weird because hearing tough guys talk about torts really like takes the like threat out of them.
Yeah, it's really just a scene so you know like, oh, they're bad guys. If you didn't know ahead of time, like, look, they're not nice to a waitress.
But we, of course, know this tech lord is in jeopardy. And well, we know that Jake and his partner Sam Houston are still trying to figure out who is going to get killed. Like they know Peter's going to kill a tech lord, but they're not sure who. And they figure it must be someone Jake is investigating because we know Peter is trying to help Jake out. But Jake's, as he says, has 30 plus tech lords he's investigating right now. So they start trying to nail it down, do a little deduction based on the fact that he really wants to protect school children. And they're able to narrow it in on this one guy who likes to order at a restaurant because, as they say, he got his start dealing tech to kids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they narrowed it down from 30, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why you hire Cosmos. They're the best. Jake's the best.
Absolutely. So, of course, they show up at the restaurant just after the goons and the tech lord have finished eating a piece of tort.
That's right. Yeah. So, yeah,
we can see now the tort's been cut and one slice is removed for each of them.
Yeah, they show up and it's basically they're essentially wanting to warn him, to like protect him, and be like, hey, just so you know, like there's a guy to get you, and he's, your classic. He's over the confident. He's like, no one can ever get me. I'm the tech lord. And then it's now that he starts going nutso, right?
Yeah, yes. He starts immediately hallucinating. My favorite hallucination of the show, I think, is he like stands up and he thinks he sees Lieutenant and Winger and the cops in the restaurant. That's just his hallucination. And he's like, what are you doing here? And the hallucination Winger tells him that the police department is downsizing, and so as a cost-cutting measure, they're going to assassinate him.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you know a budget's in bad shape. But you know what I realized? I think the hallucination is just what you're most afraid of. Is that what it's supposed to be? So this guy's most afraid of getting caught by the cops, whereas the first guy, Mr. Magoo, whatever his name is, he was mostly afraid of fireballs.
No, he's mostly afraid the police are going to have some cost-cutting measures come
right.
through. They're going to have to lay off some police officers. They won't have time to investigate him. So to cover up the cost problem, they're just going to kill people at random, judge and jury and executioner style.
He's not right in the head. He's being injected with something. We're going to find out later. It's tetrahydrolin, so don't worry. But he pulls out a machine gun and just starts shooting people. He starts shooting wantonly.
You don't get this anywhere but Tekwar. He's just like pulls out a submachine gun and just starts blowing away the entire restaurant.
That's right. And it's funny. He actually we actually see him like hit some people because he hits one of the other tech dealers.
Yeah, one of his goons gets shot. I think we're supposed to think that goon got shot because he was also hallucinating and didn't know to duck.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what they were implying. But either way, he gets shot.
After he finishes like shooting up the restaurant, he of course drops dead of a brain hemorrhage per the poison in the tort. And Winger afterward shows up with some cops. They're investigating, and Winger notices that the goon who's didn't die there, he didn't have hallucination, he didn't have a brain hemorrhage, actually works for a different tech lord, and it seems to have been, this is very complicated and a lot of politics behind tech lords, but seems to have been implanted with this other tech lord who's an enemy of his boss tech lord, so he's like some sort of double agent. But the tech lord he really works for never hires people who use tech, so he never has had tech before, and it's at which point that Jake starts just like beautiful minding like a deduction out of thin air around all of this.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. He figures out immediately through all these sort of tenuous connections that you mentioned that this guy never did tech. So this stuff what we're going to find out, it's a synthetic enzyme we're going to find out in a scene called tetrahydrolin, and it only affects people who've ever used tech before. So I guess using tech affects your brain into a way that this enzyme affects the serotonin, and only in people who've used tech before. So Jake figures that out, figures out this guy's never done tech, figures out his connections with the other tech lords, and also realizes, he looks at the cake and is like, they must have put it in the cake. I was like, you know what? It's fast. It just gets us going. But it's there's no way anyone would have thought of all these connections, but that's why Jake's the best.
No, Jake does. He even knows the waitress probably is in on it.
I know. He did that too. He was just like, who was the waitress that served this cake? I'm like, honestly, I never would have thought the waitress. That's why I'm not Jake.
That's why you're not Jake. It's why you're not the best.
That's true.
Jordan.
That's why I'm not the best. I'm a B minus.
At any rate, we cut to the bad guy's secret lair where Peter's at, and he's meeting with the waitress, who obviously is in on it, who's revealed to be his sister Rachel. And, as we've seen, he's excited to bring Jake into the fold with them to join their organization of killing tech lords and tech dealers and wiping out tech. And his sister's a little less excited about Jake. She doesn't think you can trust a tech user once they've been a tech user.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I think all the points she makes in this episode make a lot of sense, because she's just like, why would we get this ex-cop to work with us? Like, we have no evidence that he would help us. And Peter's just like, no, I like him. And she'd be like, but he hasn't proven himself to us. There's no reason. He's like, no, he's good. He'll be good. I was like, ooh, Peter, I don't know. I don't think you should be making decisions.
Well, she's just like, you can't trust anyone who's ever been addicted to anything. They're too weak.
Now, let me ask you, we've seen 2 murders. They seem to really want to use the dart gun, but this is the only time they use a cake. Do they also have other, like, highfalutin ideas of how to kill people? Like, do they have someone, like, bounce on a trampoline and accidentally get tetrahydrogen?
I mean, I guess if you can find a way to put tetrahydrogen into the trampoline, why not?
Yeah, there you go.
That one Tech Lord, Bouncy Magoo and all.
Yeah, and then they'd be like, wait a minute. Who's the guy that set up that trampoline?
At any rate, my favorite part is, like, they fight. He's just like, Peter's just like, come on, let's give him a try. I'm going to call Jake up right now. Don't worry. I know you're worried about him. But, like, there's no way he's pieced together our plan. Let's just talk to him some more and see if we can bring him along. And he calls up Jake on the car phone again. And Jake just, like, says everything he just said. He's like, it was in the cake.
Yeah.
It only kills people who use tech. The waitress is in on it. And, like, immediately Peter's like, oh, he already sorted out the whole thing. Like, he is so confident Jake won't have pieced it together. Jake's pieced it all together.
Yeah, that's right. And he's just like, yeah, it was the waitress. Anyways, it's my sister. Hey, let me mention one thing, because we're talking about Peter and Rachel. Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were trying to, like, play up like a sexual thing, because none of this seems to it's like apropos of nothing. It's like, oh, are they just, like, really close siblings, or is it like a sexual thing, or am I just reading into stuff because the performances? But then, like, later on you're like, no, there's a little thing here.
I did not catch. It did not seem sexual at all to me in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, it didn't? Because like even in these first couple conversations, she was, like, leaning on him, and, like, they were, like, very touchy-feely.
I honestly didn't. I know this will come up later in the episode, but, like, that was a surprise to me at the end, because I didn't. These two had no chemistry at all that I could see.
Well, I was gonna say that is one major problem. I think the script sort of has them be like, oh, there's, like, a weird something between these two that's, like, inappropriate, and you're not supposed to be comfortable about it. But then, yes, there's no chemistry between these two. It's like they've just met, and so you're like, what? They act like they're strangers.
Well, I mean, the thing is, too, they're always fighting every time we meet them, because they're always arguing about Jake, so there's never really any opportunity to see them, like, even as siblings, like, have any, like, niceness toward each other.
Hey, all I know is what we see later on, so it seems to check out.
Because it is true. You actually did see this, like, ending coming. It's just very funny. Yeah. It was a total shock to me later.
But we do, I was going to say, this is so, when they do mention tetrahydrogen, so that's the thing they've come up with. It's a synthetic enzyme, and here's what I like. Here's all I know about it. It's odorless, tasteless, almost undetectable. So it affects the serotonin in the brain, causing hallucinations, then death. That's what they've come up with.
Yes, it's their new genius way to, like, end all tech abuse.
Yeah. And it's not a bad idea if it didn't kill people. Too bad it doesn't, like, just, like, get people stop being hooked on it, you know?
But it just kills tech users, so it's fine.
But they say, they're going to say on later on, I highlighted this, Jake goes, there are 2.2 million tech users in the city. That's a lot, right?
Well, we don't know how many people are in that city.
Well, that's true. We don't know how big the city, but I was like, that's a lot of people for, like, and maybe it's just because we haven't seen the show in so long, but it's unclear to me, like, is this a rampaging problem? And if so, why is it such a problem? It's just because people, like, can't stop playing tech? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just basically a stand-in for, like, the crack epidemic or something. Like, people get hooked, they can't get off it, and they've just, William Shatner's just combined it with, like, virtual reality or, like, and, like, computer stuff.
Yeah, it's just that it's funny because it's like, but you want to go, like, another step. You're like, but in what way? It's just people are addicted. They're just playing video games too long. I don't know if that's like a scourge of society, you know?
Yeah, they say in it, you get one of those tech gears, you put it on your eyes, and then you just sit in the corner of a room having the best time of your life, never looking at your loved ones. Yeah, okay. And it can kill you, so that's not good either.
And there's that. But that's not what you called. They suggest, Peter suggests to Jake, they kill Moose, right?
No.
I thought who suggests that?
You're all over the place.
Yeah, who suggests they kill Moose? Or did Jake say it?
What happens is they're going to give Jake another test, another try at doing this, and they're like, why don't we kill another tech dealer, or sorry, not tech dealer, tech lord. Even I'm confused by the terminology. Another tech lord, and Jake points out doing that will cause a huge power vacuum because you'll have now, like, all these huge spaces where there's no tech lord in charge, and there's going to be violence. So what if we just kill someone who's really high profile, who we know is a tech user? And Jake just happens to know an NHL player, 3-time world champion, I believe his name is, I wrote it down here somewhere, Moose Smith.
Yeah.
And if we killed him, that would set a lot of kids straight because they'd see a tech user die, and that would really, really like put them on the straight and
Yeah.
narrow.
And coincidentally, Cosmos does his security when he does events.
Absolutely. Now, Jordan, you skipped over a bunch of stuff. You apparently hate the color of the show because you ignore it all. But man, oh man, because they go to meet Jake. They have this whole conversation because they're like, let's have another meeting. They call him on his cell phone to set this other meeting. And then Jake goes to this movie theater for the meeting. And which is very funny to me because they only ever appear in holograms. So really, they're just wasting Jake's time. They could have done this on the phone.
Well, that's the thing. He keeps sending him to different places, and it's like, yeah, it's like just call him.
But while they're at the movie theater appearing via hologram, Jordan, did you not notice what was playing at the movie theater?
No, I didn't see. What was it?
You're missing all the best parts of Tekwar.
I'm not. Trust me, Luke. I'm not missing the best parts. But what was playing?
A Schwarzenegger film called Thud 3.
Hold on. So in the next 20 years, we're gonna get 3 thuds.
There's gonna be 3 thuds, and the other movie playing was called The Coordinator, which I assume is a biopic about your life.
Okay, well, I don't coordinate, but yeah, it's a biopic of me. And hold on, the more I'm interested, what's it called? Chud movie with Schwarzenegger?
Thud, Thud,
not Chud. Thud. How old would he have been in 2047?
I mean, he keeps going. Don't worry about it.
Well, you know why? Because he got those shin implants.
You got a full butte job.
Yeah, he got a few jobs. Keeps going.
Oh man, this show rules, Jordan. Every element is so funny and so like I can't stop watching this show.
You're right. I did miss all these elements. I was just like, I spent so much time trying to remember what everything was happening in this world, and I didn't notice the little Easter eggs.
Thud 3, Jordan, and The Coordinator. They're the big hit movies.
Yeah, The Coordinator. Was it like Sylvester Stallone? Who was in The Coordinator? Did it say?
They didn't say who plays you.
It wasn't something like Kevin Spacey or something. You're like, ooh, that didn't age.
Was Kevin Spacey probably wasn't big when Tech War was out, though?
No, I don't think so. It was a couple more years. 4 people got Spacey mania.
Anyway, Jake has suggested this NHL player named Moose because he already has made plans with Moose to basically take his face via a piece of technology, which I missed from Tech War, the Morph Mask.
That's the Morph Mask. I was happy to see the Morph Mask come back because they mentioned it earlier in the episode, and I was like, oh, please be a Morph Mask. And they do. They use the Morph Mask.
Just like Chekhov always says, Jordan, if you introduce a Morph Mask in Act 1.
He did say that. It's funny.
So they've got a guy, I guess, from The Office who we've never seen before. He's got the Morph Mask on. He's going to like morph into this NHL player. And this NHL player is giving, which is so bizarre, a press conference to deny the allegations of his point shaving. So I don't know why you would choose this press conference to put a fake one in for, but that's what the one they've chose.
Yeah, it was weird. So it's like this guy who is wearing the Morph Mask, who I assume is, well, let's just say that maybe Cosmos has guys who are ready to go, but like this is a lot to ask of someone. It's not like he has just to be in a room and look like the guy. Like he has to answer questions like this guy would. It's a lot.
I know when Jake said they do private security for him at public appearances, I thought he'd be like signing hockey sticks. Instead, he's denying point shaving the commissioner's allegations against him.
That's right. Yeah.
I gotta say though, Jordan, how stoked were you to see the Hockey Hall of Fame when they walked into it?
Yeah, I knew right away. As someone who's been to the Hockey Hall of Fame, I was like, oh, they're shooting at the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's nice they got the permit there.
A Toronto landmark, and the Stanley Cup has a cameo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I also saw the Hart Trophy. I saw that in the background.
I was blown away. I'm like, I can't believe they got into the Hockey Hall of Fame to shoot this. I was wondering why the guy had to be an NHL player, but it all made sense though.
Yeah, they must have got the got into the location first, and like he's an NHL hockey player. That's what he does.
At any rate, Rachel, the sister's in the audience, and she's got a needle gun. She's ready to shoot this hockey player in the neck, and I guess the actor from Cosmos is ready to pretend to hallucinate and die. But just as it's about to happen, in storms Lieutenant Winger. He's very annoyed with Jake for not returning his phone calls.
Is that right? Oh, you're right. He is irritated. But maybe Jake doesn't even have his number.
He just walks in. He's just like, Jake, why aren't you returning my calls? And I was like, what?
I like stuff like that.
And of course, Winger turns around and he just sees the gun in this woman's hand and yells gun and goes at her. And Rachel accidentally shoots Sam Houston in the neck with the ice sliver. Houston, of course, thinks fast on her feet and immediately starts pretending to hallucinate and pretends to die of a hemorrhage on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize he was there, but her brother Peter is disguised as a man with a press badge, and he just pulls out a submachine gun and just starts shooting Winger in the back with it.
Was that Peter that did that?
Yeah, it was Peter. He was just standing there with the badge that said press on it.
Oh, I didn't realize it was Peter that was shooting the gun, because I was just like, why does this guy start shooting? But that makes a lot more sense.
I think it was Peter. I don't know who else it would have been.
Yeah, maybe it was. Anyways, but yeah, that's like the point is that the whole plan is kind of bungled. That's really what's happened.
Yes, and they're able to escape due to the fact that Winger was shot several hundred times in the back with a machine gun. And Jake is able to use the accidental killing of his friend Houston, because they think they've killed Houston now. And Jake's just like, well, you killed my friend, and, maybe I can use this to get into with your organization now. And it works. Like, Peter feels bad they killed his friend, but also, like, they discuss tech and the damage it does to people's lives.
Right, and I should mention the reason that Houston is not killed is that she's never used tech before.
Well, she's not a tech user, Jordan.
She's not a tech user, so thus the enzyme won't have done anything to them. Now, the bad guys, Peter and Rachel, don't know this, so Jake is sort of playing off. They're like, oh, you didn't know you should use tech? And he's like, no, I didn't. So they sort of buy why she died, which I actually have to say adds up pretty well for the script. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah, and it gives an opportunity for them to do some backstory. Peter tells them how him and Rachel lost their dad to tech. He was the one who sat in the corner staring at the wall until he, dropped dead. And they were raised by their disciplinary mother, who later on in the episode, someone will say, sent him to the hospital 3 times.
Yeah, and they I think more than imply, I think they do sounds and stuff when there's an eventual hallucination, that, she, whipped him and stuff. Whipped him enough that sent him to the hospital.
His mom was a disciplinarian, Jordan, but it all worked out.
He turned out all right.
At any rate, Jake points out that the hit on Moose went awry, and people at Cosmos are going to start piecing together, like, hey, what was that weird assassination attempt that happened? Someone must have tipped them off. And he's basically like, Peter, you need to bring me in from out of the cold, because if you don't, someone's going to find me, and they're going to put me back in the freezer. And I gotta say, Jordan, I missed the freezer. I forgot all about the freezer till he said it.
I forgot about it too. When they said it, I was like, oh, right, the freezer. And for anyone listening now, the freezer is the equivalent of jail, but almost like not quite a life sentence, but it might as well be. And if you've been charged with a large crime and you've been found guilty, they put you in the freezer, which is like Star Wars, like carbonite. They essentially just freeze you and put you there for an indeterminate amount of time until your sentence is over. So you could be there for 70 years. You could be frozen.
Don't do the time if you can't do the freezer time, Jordan.
That's right. Yeah, you always say that.
Remember that episode called Freezer Burn?
That's right. Oh yeah, that's right, because you get you don't feel good after being frozen.
At any rate, Peter sends Jake their location of their secret base, and Jake goes there, hands over his gun and his vid phone, and Rachel zaps him aggressively with a taser just to knock him out so he doesn't try anything funny.
It's funny because they sort of want this little turn of at this point in the episode, because we're maybe two-thirds the way through, and it's oh, are they now turning on Jake? But it's no, they just wanted him to be knocked out so they can, when he wakes up in this cell, they'll be like, anyways, we just we're being safe. I was like, okay, well, that turn didn't last very long.
Just a precaution, Jordan. There's still time for champagne now that you're awake.
That's right. They shock him to the point where he passes out, put him in essentially a cage. They let him out, and they go, anyways, champagne.
And they sort of explain their plan. This neurotoxin they've developed, whatever this is. What did you call it?
Oh, it's the enzyme? It's the tetrahydroline. It's a synthetic enzyme.
They're going to release into the city. They could do it airborne-wise, but they kind of have this new plan they've come up with. And what they're going to do is they're just going to let it spread through the city and just kill everybody who's ever used tech ever, basically. They're just going to wipe out 2 million people. And they show Jake a simulation of how it's going to travel through the city. And, Jake's watching it and he's just like, well, what about me? I'm an ex-tech user. And, Peter's like, don't worry. I created this special bauble that we'll put on your neck, and it'll put a distortion field over your brain so you'll be fine or whatever. Classic way of getting around something.
Yeah, it creates a low-level magnetic field that protects him from the enzyme. I'm going to say one thing, though, quickly. This plan that Peter and Rachel have, this putting essentially in the waterways, this enzyme, is the exact plan that Ra's al Ghul had in Batman Begins.
Perfect. It's a flawless plan.
It's a flawless plan. I was just like, hey, did Ra's al Ghul steal this from Peter?
At any rate, Jake hears the plan, and of course, we know he needs to stall for time. So it's the funniest thought I've ever heard. He's just like, well, it's a good plan, but what about all the other cities? As soon as we do this, we're going to get caught. Why don't we spend some time? We'll take the next few weeks. How about we come up with a plan where we do this in every city in the world simultaneously? And I'm just like, good stall, Jake, good stall.
Yeah, and it's funny because Peter's sort of I'll give it to this. I think the performer's always trying to be like a little bit unstable, so it maybe makes sense how easily swayed he is by Jake. But you're right, this is a bad stall, and Rachel's like not into it at all. She's like, okay, you're stalling for something that we're never going to be able to do. We're never going to be able to attack the entire world at once. Jake's like, I think you can. I think we just need a little time. She's like, this is insane. Why don't we just we're ready to go. We're ready to do 2 million people. And he's like, all right, well, I don't think I can be part of this unless you want to do it all the way, guys. And then he walks out. I was like, this is such a weird stall, and he really goes for it.
And it's all just so that like Peter can play peacemaker again and be like, no, he's a good guy, and like we can cut away and like go back to Cosmos for a second, where Nika has managed to ID Rachel and Peter. Finally, they know who they are. They did in fact have butte jobs, and they went underground. They're anti-tech activists who tried to firebomb a tech lord's house, and it kind of like drove them into like the outer skirts of a society, I guess is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about it like the police file in there and all the medical reports and stuff, and like how he's been in hospital so much because his mother used to beat him so much. And then out of nowhere she's like, also he's a sociopath. And I'm just like, okay, what?
Yeah, well, you want to know he's a really bad guy.
Yeah. This is just basically gives us enough time for like time to have passed back at bad guy HQ, and Jake's like hanging out in his bed waiting for them to make a decision about whether they're going to kill every city in the world at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he goes back to his room / like cell where he's just like chilling on the bed. He's like, I've already made my point. It's the whole world or nothing.
And they come in, and Jake makes a big speech about, really knowing firsthand the dangers of tech. Like, it's a pretty good speech, actually, where he talks about how, like, it ruined his family, ruined his life. So he knows what happened to Peter and his sister. Like, he knows the pain they went through. He caused it to his own family, and he feels bad about it. And the siblings are impressed by this speech, and they're like, all right, well, how about this, Jake? We're going to take you to our secret hiding place where we keep the murder enzyme. We're going to pick it up, and we're going to, go off and do our plan. And they go, and they've hidden it in a classic wall that's actually a hologram. So you just reach into the wall and you pull out your enzyme.
What I like, though, is like, because they can't see where they're reaching, I would have liked if they had struggled a little bit to find it because they can't see it. Like, there's other things on the shelf.
Like a bottle rolled out.
Yeah, exactly.
And as soon as, like, literally, they pull it out of the wall, and then Jake just pulls a gun out and says, haha, I got you, give me that.
Yeah, it seemed like Jake had made all the right moves in this episode. Even that stall tactic that shouldn't have worked seemed to have worked. But then right away, he just doesn't wait at all. It's like, Jake, just wait till, like, I don't know, you're in the car or something. Or to see, I don't know, there just seemed like there's a lot of other times you could have picked this. But he's just like, no, I'm going to pull my gun out right away. And I was like, Jake, even I can see they're tricking you.
And of course it is. It's all a test for him. And they're like, well, there's no bullets in that gun and there's no enzyme in this thing. Jake's like, well, I'm just going to have to fight all of your goons then. And he just starts throwing fists, just punching goons left and right.
Yeah.
And he's Jake, so he's beating the goons up.
Yeah.
So the sister Rachel picks up a barrel twice her size, lifts it over her head, and runs at Jake with the barrel. But they're on the 5th story of a building. She misses and then falls 5 stories to her death.
Yeah, she was, the idea was good. She's like, I'm going to Incredible Hulk this thing. But then she just can't handle it and falls over and dies.
I laughed so hard watching her, this small woman run with a giant barrel overhead and then flip over a banister. I was like, this show rules.
Also, like, what was her plan? Her plan was just to smash the barrel on top of him?
I guess so. It didn't make any sense. It was not well thought out.
Yeah, I just don't think it would have been that effective as an attack.
Of course, Peter's very distraught that his sister has just died, and he just runs off. He's going to go kill all these tech heads out there. And, Jake chases after him. Somehow Jake loses him. I don't know how Jake could have possibly, like, not found him, but he does. He loses them.
Yeah.
And we get a little further deduction. We get another scene of deduction where Houston and Nika are trying to figure out what he might do with this, because Jake doesn't know what the plan is yet, how they're going to release the enzyme.
That's right.
But they're like, if you're going to do that, this enzyme is water soluble, so you could put it in the water supply. But where? There's so many pump stations. And Jake's like, well, I saw a map while I was there, and it's a little hazy, but it looked like it kind of traveled through the city like this. And they're like, well, that's the 5th pump station you're talking about. And it's this like long scene where they're like deducing where it might be. Hard cut. Jake walks in and he's just like standing over the water supply like, oh, Jake, you found me.
Yeah, it's funny because it's also like, yeah, it's just, he describes something like, imagine like seeing like blueprints of something you've never seen before and don't understand how it works. He's like, yeah, I remember there was like a circle and a long line, and I think that's where it was. And she's like, that's guaranteed the 5th one. I know what that is. I'm like, okay, guys, sure. At least it's fast.
I know. They just want to get through it as quickly as they can. So Jake, like, gets there, starts talking to Peter, trying to like be like, hey, man, think about what you're doing. And then we, the audience, and Jake himself notice Peter's wearing one of these dampening devices that's supposed to save tech users from the effects of the enzyme. And Jake's just like, oh, so you've tried tech before too, eh? I bet your sister didn't know about that. He's like, is that why you brought me on? So you'd have an excuse to make a tech enzyme killing dampening device, whatever it is. And he's like,
yeah,
yes, that is true.
Yeah, so it's a little, like obviously it's a science fiction show and there's a lot of leaps of logic here, but you have to, as a viewer, understand that this guy wants to kill everyone who uses tech, but is also a tech user. He doesn't want to admit it to his sister because he thinks his sister will be upset. So he's like, I know what I'll do. I'll create this thing that protects certain people who use tech from dying, but I can't wear it because then she'll know I'm a tech user. So I'm going to call Jake in, who I know used to use tech. He can wear it and do all the work, and then thus I don't have to ever wear the device, and I can keep my secret of having used tech before. Correct?
That's basically it, I think. Jake is just there as cover. It's very funny.
Right.
And of course, they start talking about, like, he's used tech one time, and the one time he tried it was disgusting. He saw the most disgusting side of himself. It was vile, so he knew he needed to kill the tech users after he saw that. And then, Jake and him start wrestling for the vial. They fall over. The vial breaks. My favorite thing is the vial breaks on the ground, doesn't go in the water. It seems to have splashed old Peter in the face. But Peter turns over and just, like, pours the rest of it onto Jake's face. Like, he just, like, is pouring enzyme all over Jake's face.
Yeah. So we know Jake's in trouble now.
Yes, they're both in trouble. They're both the only people who are going to die of this enzyme. And Peter starts hallucinating first, so we get to see his hallucination. And you alluded to this earlier, this relationship with his sister. Mm-hmm. And, like, it's amazing. What we see is his nude sister now. She's never been nude before. She's now completely nude, and they're just making out. And then that is intercut with an elder woman whipping him like the Passion of Christ, just bloody strips coming off him with each whip, and it is wild.
Yeah, it seemed almost like, again, they sort of hinted at it earlier, but it almost seems like unmotivated how detailed this part is.
I did not expect this incest turn at all, and it is so aggressive, just like so aggressive that it's just like his sister's nude, his mother's there, she's whipping him bloody. I'm like, this is all the way. I'm blown away what's happening right now.
Well, the thing about it is there wasn't really, like, again, at least, I mean, I kind of caught it that they were implying it, but it was at most that. It wasn't like there was a build up this whole episode, right? Because even when she died, I was like, oh, his sister died, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It seemed like a lot. The scene was a lot, and I was like, is his sister naked?
0 to 60, man. And then of course he just drops dead from a brain hemorrhage.
Yeah, but don't worry. There's one more beat because Jake is hallucinating.
Yes, Jake's hallucinating. The Tort Lord is there.
That's right. It is the Tort Lord.
He's alive again. He shoots Houston in his hallucination, and then he comes at Jake. He's going to kill Jake too. And I'm just like, this is the worst thing you could think of, Jake? Okay, whatever.
Don't you think, Luke, the best thing that could have happened here was a cameo from Sid Gomez?
Oh, that'd be great if they brought Sid back for a little sneak preview.
Yeah, I agree.
Or return.
That'd be
or something.
Great. We're not that lucky, though.
No, Jake has the wherewithal, though, to crawl across the floor, grab the little dampening device that's on the ground, and, like, shove it onto his neck. And as he does, the Tort Lord disappears, and it's actually Sam Houston standing over him. She's come down to help him. And she's standing there, and, classic smooth ladies' man Jake fashion. He's just like, kiss me so I know I'm not hallucinating. And then she just, like, pinches his face really hard and says, shut the fuck up.
Well, she doesn't say it quite that.
No, she doesn't quite say it like that.
I have to ask you though. We've learned that this patch creates a sort of like a dampening field, so you are protected from the enzyme. But the enzyme's in him now, so putting on the patch shouldn't really do anything.
I thought it neutralized the enzyme though.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Because I was like, so big deal. You put the patch on. You've already infected.
No, this patch, it does it all, Jordan.
It does it all. You're right. It does it all.
Anyway, the whole thing ends with a scene, like this is it. Jay's saved, the whole plot's over, and it ends with a scene that I had trouble making sense of. And I'm going to tell you what I think was supposed to be happening in this scene, but it's Jake, it's Houston, it's Lieutenant Winger, it's a bunch of cops. They're basically dismantling Peter's like hideout, Peter and Rachel's hideout. And they accidentally trigger a pre-recorded hologram of Peter who's left a message for Jake. And in the message, he's like, hey, so I guess the plan worked. We killed all 2 million tech users in the city. I and my sister have died in the process of that somehow. It's unclear. But Jake, you've lived and you can carry on our work kind of thing. And then Jake, of course, runs over and he just turns it off. He doesn't want to watch this. And he just sort of walks out of the room. And then Winger walks over and erases the hologram message. And the best I could understand of this is, are we supposed to think that, like, this is Winger doing Jake a favor? Like, this is some incriminating message that Jake was working with them, and it would be hard to explain for the police, so Winger's just going to erase it for him?
Oh, maybe you're right. I didn't really think that. I thought it was more just like, they were just like, enough of this guy. It's over. And just like finishing with it. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's a little bit of supposed to be a moment of Winger being like, all right, Jake, you did a good job. I'm gonna help you out.
Yeah, it was not clear what we were supposed to be happening, because really, like, Jake just looks annoyed to be still hearing this man's voice. That's why he stops it, and then Winger erases it. I was just like,
well, that's what I mean. It just looked like he was just like, I'm done with this case. That's what I kind of thought.
Yeah, it was an odd ending. Like, I couldn't quite suss out what it meant, other than like they needed to fill the last 30 seconds of the episode.
Yeah. Also, why do you think Peter would have assumed? Because essentially, what it is like it's a video like suicide letter, right? Like a suicide note. So I wasn't sure why he would have assumed that Jake would have survived, but they would have died.
Well, it's
Don't
such
you think
a weird assumption, right? That Jake stayed on their side, that they successfully did the mission, but not only did Peter die, which maybe he could have because of his tech use not telling anybody, but also his sister was dead.
Yeah, it was weird. But it was just like, yeah, it was to have this, it was set up so we have this moment that's ambiguous at best.
I guess what we don't know is he recorded like 75 different holo messages for a variety of different intervals. One of them, they get a tort on their way home, and they talk about he's like, oh, I see you got a tort. Looks good. I can't wait to get here.
Yeah. So I know we're all drunk off this champagne. Anyways, I thought I'd leave a quick video message.
All right, Jordan. Well, any final thoughts, any final notes on Tekwar before we get into ratings?
Well, it was funny because going back to Tekwar obviously being years later, and again, we had sort of said, like, how is it going to hold up, and how is it going to be in comparison with some of the other things we've watched? And you're right. There's a certain charm to this show. Like, look, it's not really well directed or acted. The props and sets are bad and cheap, and some of the costumes are bad too. But there is definitely like something there that's kind of fun about this show, which is something that has been lacking a lot of TV shows we watch, is that kind of element of fun. And I will say this. Yes, there's some leaps of logic and there's some things that don't make sense. However, everything happens in the proper order and it all sort of like ties in and wraps up. You're like, all right, that was an episode of TV. Where sometimes you're just like we just watched Project UFO where it was just like spinning wheels until the very end. They're like, anyways, nothing happened. I'd prefer this to Project UFO.
Jordan, I think you owe Tekwar an apology.
I think I do. I think I owe Tekwar an apology. I'm sorry, Tekwar. You're not that bad. You're not good, but you're not that bad. Compared to some of the stuff we've watched, you're not that bad.
And Jordan, I think you owe a thank you to Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I was happy to be back. I'll tell you that much. Well, okay, what do you want to rate Zero Tolerance?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, this is from our, what I would say, future perspective of looking back at this show. It's probably higher than I would have rated if we had just watched it in a row. Because, again, I guess I would have probably called you and be like, Luke, I can't do this. This podcast's over. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Yeah, Jordan, I mean, Butte Jobs, Morph Masks, Lieutenant Winger, Jake Cardigan, Surfing the Net Through the Matrix, a full blowing nude incest brother-sister makeout at the end. Jordan, Tekwar's got it all. I love this show.
And what are you going to give it?
8.5.
8.5. That's got to be your highest you've ever given a Tekwar.
I now think Tekwar is the best thing we've watched.
Well, maybe someone else will suggest another episode.
Every moment of it was funny. all the dialogue is like bizarre. Like there's so much depth and like weird canon, and like even the stuff in the background, like just Thud 3 in the background. I'm like, what? This show has so much more effort put into it than most of the stuff we watch.
You're right. There is the people who like the art team and the set deck team and stuff. These people put in a lot of effort, and what I'm assuming is not a lot of support from the top, but they did their job.
Oh dear, but it was fun. It was really fun to go back and watch some Tekwar.
Me too. I was a little disappointed Shatner wasn't there. I really hoped for us he'd be there, but I know he's like his involvement was negligible at best.
Yeah. I mean, he's only out there when his daughter's written and directed an episode.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's true.
At any rate, seriously, thank you to Ryan for making that donation and for asking us to watch this episode. It was a real treat to go back and watch some Tekwar. And
I'm glad we watched it.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough for doing that donation to charity on our behalf and on your own behalf, and for us to get to watch this. So it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, listener, want one of these bonus content, bonus episode things for yourself, you can go to our website or you can check our social media. We have a link on there, but there's a bonus episodes for charity section. You can go in, you can select one of the charities that have been pre-selected by our past guests have listed their favorite charities. You give a donation to one of those, and we'll do a bonus episode for you. You can go there. You can read all the details on how you pick an episode that we didn't watch before. All that stuff's on the website. I'll let you go check it out for yourself.
Yeah. Are you desperate for Threshold? Threshold.
You can get those last 2 episodes of Threshold.
Yeah. How do you think that show's aged?
I mean, it was pretty tough when we were watching it. That was pretty old.
Yeah. Yeah. Tekwar wasn't a struggle.
Tekwar, it was not a struggle. It was honestly a real treat.
Yeah, agreed.
At any rate, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com as always, and on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. We're going to have some clips from Tekwar as always.
Naked Sister. You love that. The Naked Sister is going to be on.
Yeah, her back. Her just her back is just all we see.
It's PG nudity.
We'll definitely have some morph masks. We'll definitely have some fireballs.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, what else happened in this episode? Are you going to try to get is there enough to get a clip of Thud 3?
I'm unfortunately not. It's only in their background for a quick second. But
so you'll have to watch it and enjoy that yourself.
You have to imagine Thud 3 for yourself.
That's right.
But I will begin to work on the screenplay for The Coordinator soon.
Nice. Let me know if you need any tips.
Insider knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But that wraps it up for this little bonus content episode. So, listener, thank you for joining us. And Ryan, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Ryan.
He doesn't get a chant.
All right, everybody. We'll see you back on the regular show.
Bye.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.